At my mom's birthday party, she called my sister's husband the son I have always wanted while I was sitting nearby. She didn't expect what happened next when my grandfather said a single sentence that, "I'm 41 years old and I've spent most of my adult life biting my tongue to keep the peace." I thought that if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd eventually notice me or at least notice my kid. But I was wrong, and the moment I finally stopped playing along was the moment everything started unraveling. Growing up, my sister Claire was the sun, and the rest of us were expected to orbit around her. She was 2 years younger than me, but it always felt like she was born in a spotlight. Straight A's, violin lessons, ballet recitals, scholarships, she had it all. And every time she succeeded, my parents clapped louder than anyone else. It wasn't just pride, it was obsession. Every photo in the house was of Claire. Every dinner conversation somehow circled back to Claire. And if I ever dared to bring up anything I'd done, it was either brushed aside or compared to how Claire had done it better. I thought that when we grew up and started families of our own, things might even out. I was wrong. Claire married a corporate lawyer named Brandon, Mr. Polo Shirt and Smile for the Christmas card. He was the kind of guy who could talk for 20 minutes without saying anything. Their kids had names like Everly and Jasper and were apparently fluent in Mandarin by age 6. My son Max is 11. He's smart, kind, and obsessed with drawing video game characters in the margins of his school notebooks. He's not flashy. He's not the type to win spelling bees or go viral playing cello solos on TikTok. But he's mine, and I'd take one Max over a dozen of Claire's Instagram-filtered life any day. But my parents never saw it that way. They called Claire's family the perfect pack, not even joking. My mom had a mug that said "World's Best Nana," and it was covered in photos of Claire's kids, but not a single one of Max. She said she didn't have a good picture of him. He was 6 at the time. Over the years, I let the small slight slide. Like when they forgot to invite Max to Claire's daughter's birthday party, then claimed the evite must have gone to spam. Or when they offered to help pay for Everly's horseback riding lessons, but told me they were tight on funds when I asked for help getting Max a new laptop for school. They didn't even hide it. My dad once said, "Well, Claire's kids are just more active in things." But the thing that really got under my skin, they forgot Max's birthday. Not once, not twice, 3 years in a row. The first time I brushed it off. Maybe they were busy. The second year, I reminded them a week in advance. Nothing. No call, no card. Max didn't say anything, but I could tell it stung. The third year, I didn't remind them. I wanted to see if they'd remember on their own. They didn't. They called me the next day to brag about Everly's piano recital. I was sitting on the couch with Max eating leftover cake and watching him silently draw a dragon on his tablet when I decided I was done making excuses for them. I didn't say anything out loud. Not yet. But something shifted in me. The part of me that used to say it's fine, and they didn't mean it, just went quiet, replaced by something colder, more certain. The final straw came a few months later when my mom turned 70. Claire planned a huge party, rented out a hall-catered dinner open bar slideshow of family memories. Max and I were seated at a table in the back next to the coat rack. I counted 14 photos of Claire's family in the slideshow, 2 of my parents in their youth, not a single one of me or Max. Still, I kept my mouth shut. Max was playing a quiet game on his Switch, and I didn't want to ruin the night for him. But then came the toasts. Claire got up first and did her whole emotional monologue. How mom was her best friend. How she couldn't have raised such incredible kids without her guidance. How Brandon felt like he hit the jackpot with such a supportive mother-in-law. There were tears, applause, clinking glasses. I smiled politely. I thought that was the end. Then my mom stood up. She thanked everyone for coming. She made a few jokes. Then she looked directly at Brandon and said, "You are the son I always wanted." I froze. There was a ripple of awkward laughter, but my mom didn't crack a smile. She meant it. I looked around the room expecting anyone to react. Claire grinned. Brandon looked bashful. My dad nodded approvingly. Nobody even glanced at me. I glanced down at Max, who had pulled his hoodie up and was pretending not to have heard, but I saw his jaw tighten. I felt my throat close. And then before I could even stand up or say a word, there was a loud clink. My grandfather, my mom's dad, 93 years old, sharp as ever, had set down his glass and slowly pushed back his chair. He stood up, eyes locked on my mom, and said a single sentence that made the entire room stop breathing. The room fell into silence so thick you could hear the creak of my grandfather's joints as he rose to his full height. For a man well into his 90s, he still had presence. Back straight, voice clear, no-nonsense gaze that made even the most arrogant people sit up straighter. All eyes were on him as he pointed his gnarled finger toward my mother and said, "That's enough, Elaine. You already have a son, but you've spent your life pretending you don't." I didn't move. No one did. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. Claire looked stunned for a split second before shooting a nervous smile to the guests as if to say, "Oh, Grandpa and his old stories." But no one laughed. Not this time. My mother's face twitched. Part confusion, part offense, like she couldn't decide whether to defend herself or act like it was all a joke. Grandpa didn't sit back down. "I've watched you for 40 years, he said. 40 years of brushing aside your firstborn because he wasn't shiny enough. 40 years of parading Claire around like a trophy and acting like Nick with some stranger's kid. You want to call Brandon your son, fine. But don't pretend that doesn't come at a cost." That boy, he pointed directly at Max, who had now lowered his hood and was staring with wide eyes. "He's your grandson, and if you can't remember his birthday, then you don't deserve to be called his grandmother." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but Grandpa cut her off with a slight wave of his hand as if the matter was settled. And in a way it was. He sat down. No applause, no gasps, just the awkward scraping of silverware. And a few people coughing into their napkins. I could feel Claire burning holes into my skull from across the room. Brandon just sipped his wine like nothing had happened. And my mom, she looked older in that moment than she ever had. Her hands shook slightly as she picked up her glass and toasted to family with forced cheer, her voice an octave too high. No one raised their glasses. After that night, everything cracked. For a few weeks, it was quiet. I didn't hear from my parents. No calls, no texts. Max asked if Grandma was mad at us. And I told him the truth. "Maybe, but it's not your fault." He nodded and went back to drawing his usual scene, a cartoon knight with spiky hair fighting a dragon twice his size. He titled it, "Knight versus the Big Bernie Lie." The holidays came. Claire hosted as always. I wasn't invited. My parents went, of course. I saw the photos on Facebook, everyone in matching plaid pajamas, Brandon holding a glass of wine like he was royalty, Everly playing violin in front of a giant tree, my mom beaming with her arms around Jasper and Claire. Max and I spent Christmas watching old movies and baking cookies that burned on the bottom. I offered to take him sledding, but he shook his head and said he didn't want to go outside. "Let's just stay here. I like it when it's just us." He didn't say it outright, but I knew he was hiding from the disappointment. In early January, I got a call from Claire. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. I didn't want to talk to her. Not after everything, but something told me to pick up. "Hey, Nick," she said in that voice she uses when she's pretending to be warm. "I just wanted to give you a heads up. Mom's thinking of revising the will. She's been upset since the party. She said she's not sure she wants to include Max anymore." I didn't respond right away. I was too stunned. The will, we never even discussed it. I didn't care about money, but the idea that she'd go so far as to remove my son just because my grandfather called her out. She said she's reconsidering everything. Claire continued lowering her voice as if she were doing me a favor. Brandon and I tried to talk her down, but you know how she is. I wanted to scream. Claire was pretending to be neutral, like she wasn't gleefully watching me get iced out, like she hadn't spent decades letting Mom do the exact same thing without ever once standing up for me. "I don't care about the will," I finally said. "Tell Mom she can leave everything to you. I hope it keeps you warm at night." There was a pause. "Well," she said, clearly not expecting that. "Okay, just thought you should know." She hung up without saying goodbye. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, Max came home from school quieter than usual. I asked him how his day went. He shrugged and said, "Okay." Then he went to his room without even asking for his usual after-school snack. I gave him some space, thinking maybe he was tired. But an hour later, I found him sitting on his bed, staring at his tablet with his fists clenched. He handed it to me without saying a word. It was a group photo from Everly's birthday party. Some big outdoor thing with a rented petting zoo and a magician. Max's classmates were there. A couple of his teachers, Claire, my parents, Brandon, wearing a ridiculous top hat like he was the host of some children's TV show. Max wasn't in the photo because he hadn't been invited. That's what broke me. Not the photo, not the exclusion, not even the fact that my parents had attended and never mentioned it. It was the look on Max's face, like he wasn't surprised anymore, just quietly resigned. "Did you want to go?" I asked softly. He didn't answer, just gave me the smallest shrug, like even answering that would be a waste of effort. That night, I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with every slight, every insult, every time I'd swallowed my pride for the sake of keeping the family peace. And for what? To be treated like a footnote, To watch my son grow up thinking he didn't matter. I made a decision. No more playing nice. No more second chances. If they wanted distance, I'd give it to them, but not quietly, not passively. They'd feel it. And it didn't take long for the opportunity to arrive. In March, my mom called me out of the blue. "Nick," she said, "we're planning a family trip this summer to Italy. We're thinking Tuscany, maybe Florence. Brandon has a contact who can get us a villa. It'll be a full family thing. Your sister really wants everyone there." I stared at the wall, trying to figure out if this was a joke. She continued, "We like Max to come. Claire says Jasper misses him." I laughed. I couldn't help it. A sharp, bitter laugh that caught her off guard. Oh, now Jasper misses him. After they forgot his birthday and left him out of Everly's party, there was a beat of silence. Well, that wasn't intentional. Claire didn't think Max would be comfortable because he wasn't even invited. My mom sighed, and suddenly I could hear the defensiveness creeping back in. "Don't make this a thing, Nick. We're trying to include you now. Don't be difficult." That was when I realized what this was. Not an apology, not an olive branch. They needed a full family photo for the villa trip, something to post online, something to prove we were all still one big happy family. And Max and I were accessories, props, not people. "I'll think about it," I said coldly. "Let me know the dates." I hung up. That was the moment the idea started to form. A plan. Not revenge. Not exactly, but something deeper. Something that would make them see. Something they wouldn't be able to ignore. And I knew exactly how to start. But first I had to call my grandfather because he remembered birthdays. And he remembered the truth. And he remembered what my mother would rather forget. I didn't tell Max everything. Not yet. He was too young to carry the weight of all this. And I didn't want him growing up bitter just because the people who were supposed to love him most couldn't see what they had. But I did tell him we wouldn't be seeing Grandma and Grandpa for a while. He didn't ask why. He just nodded and went back to drawing a picture of a robot knight shielding a small boy from a dragon made of fire and piano keys. I didn't need to ask what it meant. After that call with my mom, I stopped answering. Emails, texts, voicemails, they piled up, and I let them. I muted the family group chat. I ignored Claire's passive-aggressive just checking in messages. And for the first time in my life, I stopped explaining myself. The silence felt strange at first, like walking away from a burning house and realizing the heat no longer touches you. But slowly, it started to feel like peace. Still, it wasn't easy. The lowest point came in April when Max came home from school and handed me a flyer crumpled in the bottom of his backpack. "Dad," he said, "there's this art competition thing, but it costs money to enter, so maybe we can't." I unfolded the paper. It was a regional contest for middle school students. First prize was a full scholarship to a summer program at the local arts academy, Max's dream, but the entry fee was $95, and the supplies list included things like professional markers and illustration boards. I looked around our apartment. Rent had gone up again. My job as a freelance web designer paid the bills, but barely. A couple clients had ghosted on invoices, and I hadn't gotten a new contract in over a month. The fridge needed stocking. Max had grown out of his sneakers, and the car was making a sound I couldn't afford to investigate. I put the flyer down. "Let me figure it out," I told him. "We'll make it work." He nodded again, quiet as ever. But I could see it. The flicker of hope, the part of him that still wanted to believe that sometimes, maybe things could work out. That night, I sat in front of my computer with a pit in my stomach. I dug through old files, mock-ups, templates, anything I could package and sell. I listed a design bundle on a digital marketplace. I stayed up until 3 a.m., rewriting my resume. I updated my LinkedIn profile for the first time in 2 years. I applied to 7 job postings and sent 5 cold emails to potential clients. It felt like throwing stones into a canyon. But a week later, someone threw one back. A guy named Terrence from a mid-sized tech startup replied to one of my cold pitches. He said they needed a complete redesign of their client dashboard. Tight deadline, tight budget, but decent pay. I took it immediately, no hesitation. For the next 3 weeks, I buried myself in work. Mornings with Max, afternoons designing, evenings reviewing mock-ups, nights making revisions until my eyes burned. I slept maybe 4 hours a night, drank too much coffee, and lived off peanut butter sandwiches. But by the end of it, I delivered something I was proud of. And more importantly, I got paid. Not a fortune, but enough. Max entered the art contest. We bought the markers. The board's the entry fee. He worked on his piece every day after school, tongue between his teeth, headphones on, laser-focused. I didn't look until he was done. When he finally showed it to me, I had to sit down. It was a single image. A boy on a small island made of bricks and memory cards holding a pencil like a sword. Around him swirled a sea of dragons made of spreadsheets, broken clocks, and empty photo frames. Above him hovered a shadowy figure with sharp teeth wearing a crown made of piano keys. The boy wasn't scared. He was drawing the world into something new. I stared at it for a long time before I said, "This is incredible." Max just shrugged. "It's what I feel like." He didn't say anything about Grandma or Claire. He didn't have to. That same week I got a second job offer. This one full-time. A marketing firm looking for someone to lead their UI/UX team. Remote benefits, stable hours. They like my recent work with Terrence. Wanted to offer a 6-month contract to start with room to grow. I almost cried when I signed the papers. For the first time in years, things felt possible. I started waking up earlier, made real breakfast instead of cereal, took Max out on weekends, museums, thrift stores, comic book shops. We didn't talk about the family much, but slowly he started smiling more, laughing at my bad jokes again, showing me his sketches before he finished them, asking me to watch him draw. I felt like I was getting my son back. Not the quiet, guarded version I'd learned to accept, but the one who used to jump on the couch and narrate imaginary battles with toy soldiers. Then the contest results came in. Max didn't win first place, he won grand prize. He got the scholarship and an additional feature in the regional art magazine. His school made an announcement. His art teacher cried. I picked him up that day, and he ran toward me like he was 6 again, flung his arms around my neck and whispered, "I think I'm actually good at something." I held him tighter than I should have and whispered back, "You always were." That night, as I was cleaning up dinner, my phone buzzed. It was Claire. For the first time in months, her message was short. Did Max really win that contest? Mom's freaking out. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They hadn't changed. Not really. They didn't call to congratulate Max. They didn't message to apologize for ignoring his birthday. They reached out because someone else had praised him, because his success suddenly reflected on them. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my grandfather. He answered on the second ring. "Nick?" He said, "I saw the article." "You proud, more than I can say." He chuckled. "I knew that boy had it in him. He's got your fire and your mother's stubbornness, but the good kind." We talked for an hour about art, about family, about memory and grief and legacy. He told me something I'll never forget. Sometimes, he said, when people show you who they are, it's not a tragedy, it's a gift. Now you know where to stop pouring your love. I sat with that for a long time. The next day, I emailed the coordinator for the Italy trip. Claire had added me months ago when she assumed we'd be attending. I wrote a polite but firm message. "Max and I won't be joining. Please remove us from any further communications. We wish you all the best." I didn't get a reply. But a week later, my mom finally called. She left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, brittle. "Nick, I saw the magazine." "That's good." "Very good. I just don't understand why you're shutting us out. You're being dramatic. Your sister has always tried to include you." Brandon says, "Well, it doesn't matter. But this has gone on long enough. I hope you'll reconsider." I didn't. And that silence, it became my freedom. I got promoted 3 months into the contract. Max started writing a graphic novel. We framed his contest piece and hung it in the hallway. Every time I passed it, I felt something in my chest loosen, like I'd been holding my breath for years and was finally learning how to breathe again. Then in June, I got an invitation. My grandfather's 94th birthday. A backyard barbecue. No RSVP required. Just come if you can. I hadn't seen most of the family since my mom's 71st. I debated whether to go. Max didn't. "We should," he said. Grandpa was the only one who stood up for us. So we went, and that's where the next chapter began. Because when we showed up, Max in a button-down shirt, he hated carrying a handmade card. Everyone turned to stare. Not with mockery, not with pity, but with something I hadn't seen in years. Recognition. The kind that comes when someone realizes the person they thought would stay down is standing taller than ever. And somewhere behind the grill, I saw Brandon pause mid-tongs, his smile faltering. Claire's jaw clenched, and my mother, seated at the head table in her usual floral blouse, turned pale as she watched Max hand Grandpa the card and receive a tight, teary-eyed hug in return. Walking into my grandfather's backyard felt like stepping onto the stage of a play where the script had been flipped without warning. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading a family gathering. I wasn't bracing for backhanded compliments or forced smiles or the subtle exclusion that always found its way into conversations like mildew. No, this time I walked in with Max by my side, our heads high and silence on our side. The reactions were everything I expected, and more. Claire was the first to see us. She was near the dessert table holding a plate with 3 carefully cut triangles of lemon bars, laughing with one of her yoga friends. The moment she spotted Max and me, her laugh died mid-giggle. She didn't move, didn't wave, just blinked and tilted her head like she couldn't quite compute what we were doing there. Brandon turned next mid-sip of his craft beer, and his reaction was almost comical. His eyebrows rose like he'd seen a ghost, and his lips formed a tight line as he muttered something to Claire. I caught only one word. Awkward. Perfect. My mother was seated under a big white canopy surrounded by what I could only describe as her hand-picked cord of loyal relatives. The same ones who'd reposted every perfect Pack family photo for the last decade. She didn't stand when we approached. She didn't smile. She didn't even make eye contact. Max and I walked right past them. We went straight to Grandpa. He was manning the grill, wearing an apron that said "old but dangerous" in bright red letters, and holding a spatula like it was a sword. When he saw Max, his face broke into a smile so wide it made my chest ache. They high-fived like old teammates and hugged like they hadn't just seen each other a few weeks ago. "You made it," Grandpa said, clapping me on the back. "Wasn't sure you'd want to." "I didn't," I said, "but Max did." That earned me a wink. Smart boy. We stayed close to Grandpa for most of the afternoon, helping with the food, avoiding the main cluster of folding chairs where the gossip flowed like sweet tea. Max handed out burgers. I refilled drinks. I caught a few people giving us strange looks. Not hostile, just curious, the same way people look at a puzzle missing a piece. Eventually, Claire approached. Her heels clicked on the patio as she walked over holding a paper plate of fruit skewers like it was a peace offering. She smiled like she practiced it in the mirror. "Hey," she said too brightly. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Likewise," I replied. She gestured at Max. "He's gotten so tall. He's 11 still. Feels like just yesterday we were all at Mom's for Christmas. Remember that year he got the little robot?" I didn't reply. That was the same year they'd forgotten his birthday again. Claire glanced around, voice dropping. "Listen, Mom's been kind of upset. Ever since the party, she's felt like you're icing her out." I sipped my drink and waited. "She's trying," Claire said. "I know it doesn't always look that way, but she's not." I cut in. Trying would be picking up the phone to apologize. Trying would be remembering her grandson's name on a school form. Trying would be acting like he exists when she tells people about her family. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line. "You always twist things, Nick. You make everything about you." That stung, but only for a moment, because I realized something as she said it. She didn't see me anymore. Not really. I was just a character in her perfect narrative, one she could dismiss when it got uncomfortable. I smiled. "Good seeing you, Claire." And I walked away. Later that night, after the guests had started trickling out and the string lights flickered overhead, Grandpa called me over to the side of the yard where he kept his old tool shed. He leaned against it, arms crossed, a gleam in his eyes. "You ready?" he asked. I blinked. For what, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small manila envelope. To do something about it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of my grandfather's living trust. Updated 2 months prior. "I'm leaving the lake house to you and Max," he said. "Claire thinks she's getting it. Your mother assumes it'll be passed to Brandon for the kids, but I've got other plans." I nearly dropped the papers. "What?" he chuckled. "You earned it. And I want Max to have a place that feels like home, not a photo backdrop. But no buts. I already told my lawyer. It's ironclad. Just don't say anything until I'm gone. I want to see the look on their faces when the truth comes out." I stared at him, speechless. That's when I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of legacy, of respect, of the fact that someone had seen me chosen, me trusted me, and suddenly I had something I hadn't had in years. Leverage. From that moment on, the pieces started falling into place. It wasn't revenge I was after. Not exactly. I wasn't going to torch their lives or sabotage their reputations. That would be too easy and too obvious. What I wanted was something quieter, slower, the kind of shift they wouldn't notice until it was too late. I started small. A few weeks after the barbecue, I signed Max up for a community art showcase. Nothing big, just a local gallery hosting a youth art night. But I invited some of the extended family. Not my mom or Claire, just the cousins, the ones who always looked a little awkward at big family events. The ones who had kids Max's age but never got invited to perfect pack outings. They came. They brought their kids. They saw Max's work and gushed over it. Took photos, tagged me on Facebook. A week later, I got a message from my cousin Lydia. I didn't know Max was this talented. We should do more stuff together. Claire's always made it sound like he's shy or uninterested. That was the first crack in the wall. The second came when I finally accepted an invitation to a family cousin brunch. I brought Max. I didn't mention Claire, but I did tell a story about Max's art camp, about how proud I was about the contest win and the upcoming comic book fair. I spoke with warmth, with pride, and without bitterness, and people listened. They saw. Then I started reaching out to my mom's siblings, my uncles and aunts, sharing updates about Grandpa, offering to help coordinate his care, dropping in thoughtful updates about Max's accomplishments. Not bragging, just facts. But once they hadn't heard from Claire or my mother, because those stories didn't fit the perfect pack narrative, it was a slow process. But it worked. The family's focus started shifting. Not entirely, not all at once. But the spell Claire had cast was weakening. And through it all, I never confronted my mother, never demanded apologies, never accused her of anything. I just moved forward with purpose quietly until August came, and with it an invitation. My mother was hosting a formal legacy dinner at the lake house, the same house Grandpa had quietly transferred to me in his trust. It was to be an elegant evening, she said. Family only, a celebration of heritage and values. I showed Max the invitation. He looked up at me. "Are we going?" I smiled. "Oh, we're going," because now I had a plan. The evening of the legacy dinner arrived with the kind of late summer humidity that makes even fancy linen clothes feel heavy. Max and I dressed simply. Nothing flashy, just clean button-downs and pressed pants. I didn't want to stand out because of what I wore. I wanted to stand out because of what was about to happen. And trust me, something was about to happen. As we approached the lake house, the sun was dipping behind the water, casting long gold streaks across the surface. The place looked beautiful in that postcard kind of way. Painted porch rocking chairs, string lights twinkling as if the house itself was holding its breath. It wasn't lost on me that soon legally, this place would be mine. I parked the car, Max let out a small breath and tightened his grip on the birthday card he'd made for Grandpa the night before. "You ready?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah." Inside the house buzzed with conversation. The entire extended family was there. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people I hadn't seen in years. Claire and Brandon were in the middle of the room greeting relatives like they were royalty. My mother was stationed near the fireplace wearing a deep navy dress and clutching a glass of wine like a queen prepared to issue decrees. When she saw me, her expression flickered between surprise and irritation. "Well," she said, "you actually showed." "We were invited," I said. Her lips twitched. "Of course. Family is family, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We all took our seats around an enormous dining table, the kind you only bring out when you want to impress people. Brandon sat next to my mother, flashing his practiced smile. Claire took her seat across from me, chin tilted upward as if waiting to be admired. Max sat beside me, quietly fidgeting with his napkin. When the servers, yes, actual servers, brought out the first course, my mother stood to make her speech. She tapped her glass with the back of a spoon. "Before we begin, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Family means so much to me, and with everything happening in the world, I think it's important that we honor our roots." I could see where this was going. She'd done this at a dozen gatherings. A grand monologue about legacy tradition values and always ending with a sentimental ode to Claire and her perfect family. My mother continued, "This home has stood for generations. It's a symbol of what our family has built. And tonight I want to acknowledge the people who will continue that legacy." I felt Max shift beside me. He knew something was wrong. He could sense the tension the same way animals sense storms. My mother smiled, lifting her glass toward Claire and Brandon. "These two have been such a source of pride for me. The way they raise their children, the way they bring us all together." A few polite claps, and one day when this home is passed on, I know it will be in the best possible hands. That did it. My grandfather, seated at the far end of the table, lowered his fork slowly. Deliberately, he cleared his throat. "Actually," he said, voice calm but firm, "that's not true." Every head swiveled toward him. Even the servers froze. My mother blinked. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Grandpa dabbed at the corners of his mouth with his napkin. "The home isn't going to Claire, or Brandon, or their children." Claire laughed nervously. "Grandpa, what do you mean? Mom already said I know what she said." Grandpa interrupted. "But she doesn't own the house." Silence. I watched as realization crept across their faces like a slow-moving shadow. "Dad," my mother said, "what are you talking about?" Of course, you don't own it, Grandpa repeated. I do. And months ago I changed the trust. That's when he looked at me. Not subtly, not vaguely directly. I've chosen Nick and Max as the inheritors. The words hit the room like a dropped chandelier. There was no applause, no shock of joy, just the sound of Claire's fork clattering to her plate and my mother's glass tightening in her hand. Brandon was the first to speak. That's ridiculous, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. This house has always been intended for Claire. We've made plans. We've discussed renovations. Grandpa shrugged. You should have checked the paperwork. My mother stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Dad, this is absurd. Nick doesn't even come here anymore. He's barely involved in family events. That's because you pushed him out, Grandpa snapped. And I'm done watching it happen. My mother's face went red. We didn't push him out, he isolated himself. I felt something inside me go very still. For years I'd wanted to defend myself, wanted to yell, cry, argue, demand better. But now I didn't need to. Grandpa was doing it for me. No, he said. You ignored him. You belittled him. You forgot your own grandson's birthday. You treated Claire's family like royalty and treated Nick and Max like extras. Claire jumped in her voice sharp. Oh, come on. That's not fair. We tried to include Max in things. He was always quiet. He was quiet, I said. Because every time he talked, you talked louder. Claire's jaw dropped. Excuse me? You heard me? Brandon scoffed. This is childish. Nick, you're really going to take the house after everything your mother's done for the family? I turned to look at him fully. What has she done for us? He opened his mouth closed. It opened it again. Nothing came out. My mother tried a different approach. Nick, please be reasonable. This is a family home. Claire's kids need the space. They're growing. They're involved in activities, their equipment. I laughed under my breath. There it is. She blinked. What? Not once, I said. Have you ever asked what Max needs? A ripple of whispers moved across the table. My mother stiffened. This isn't about birthdays or school events. This is about fairness. It is, I said. For the first time it is. She stared at me, eyes flashing with a mix of disbelief and insult. You wouldn't dare keep the house. You don't have the money to maintain it. Oh, don't worry, Grandpa said, leaning back with satisfaction. I covered 10 years of property taxes in a fund. Should be plenty of time for Nick to decide if he wants to keep it or sell it. Claire made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a squeak. Sell it. That's right. Grandpa looked at me. Eyes soft now. Do with it what you want. And that was that. The dinner unraveled instantly. Conversations died. My mother excused herself to get some air, which really meant storming out. Claire whispered angrily to Brandon, who motioned with wide eyes for her to lower her voice. A few relatives muttered things like, good for him, under their breath. Max tugged at my sleeve. Dad, can we go outside? We slipped out onto the back porch. The air was cooler now, the moon pushing silver light across the lake. Max leaned against me. Does this mean we have a house? I rested my hand on his shoulder. Yeah, bud. It does. He looked up at me. Why would Grandpa do that for us? I smiled. Because he sees you. We stood there for a long moment quiet. Inside, voices rose in sharp tones. Accusations, denials, the sound of an empire cracking. But out here, it was peaceful, honest, real. Eventually, Grandpa shuffled out to join us. He had 2 slices of cake, one for me and one for Max. I think that went well, he said. I laughed. You call that well? He winked. Better than the alternative. We ate in silence, watching the water ripple softly. When Max went to skip stones along the shore, Grandpa leaned toward me. You didn't take anything from them, he said. You just finally accepted what was yours. I swallowed hard. Thank you. He nodded. Just promise me one thing. Make sure that boy grows up knowing he deserves the world, not scraps. I nodded. I will. And I meant it. Inside, the chaos continued. Voices rose, doors slammed. The perfect pack narrative cracked wide open. But out here on the porch with the moonlight and the quiet, and my son laughing as a stone skipped 6 times across the lake, I felt something deep and steady inside me, something that had been missing for years. My mother and sister spent their whole lives building a perfect image. I didn't. I just built a life worth living. And when the night finally came to a close and Max and I walked back to the car, I felt no guilt, no doubt, no second guessing, just clarity. Because for the first time, I wasn't the forgotten son. I was the one who walked away with the legacy. And as we drove home with the windows cracked open, Max humming softly in the passenger seat, I realized something that hit me like a clean beam of truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's becoming everything they failed to see.